Good morning from the chapel. I'm actually outside, as you can see. It's so pretty here in late August as we get ready to start into the fall, and I just can't help but being outside and just love what God's doing. So I thought I'd just come to you again from just outside the chapel. So grace to you this morning. Jesus said, I've come that you may have life and that you might have it more abundantly. So many times people, I think, settle for just a little bit of what God has for them, when the truth of it is God has come, and not only just come, but from the beginning has intended for you and I to have everything that He is and has for us, to have an abundance of it, to have a quality of life that is beyond anything that human beings can do or imagine or achieve on their own. You can't achieve abundant life. It is received by grace, and it's experienced in the totality of His goodness to us. So how might we truly live in this abundant life that He has for us? Well, one of the thoughts that I would share with you just quickly this morning is, so many times when something in our lives doesn't go just the way we thought it would, that we run into some sort of cave. We go into some sort of isolation mode, and we flee from whatever it is that we think we cannot overcome, or that looks or appears or that we perceive has overcome us. The prophet Elijah is a case in point. I mean, if you think about it, he was on Mount Carmel, had accomplished some great stuff in calling down fire and defeating the false prophets, and he had outrun Ahab. But then the outcome didn't look the way he thought it would. In other words, he had this perceived outcome. He had this predetermined outcome, and when it didn't look the way he thought it was going to look, then he left Carmel and ran to a cave. And he ran into this cave that was dark. He couldn't see. He lived in a darkness where he couldn't perceive what God was really doing. And you know, there's two ways to experience blindness. One is that you have a physical condition and you can't see. Number two, you put yourself in an atmosphere or an environment or a state that you cannot see what's really going on. And so you choose to live in a cave. And there are many people today that are living in the cave of their own creation. They have looked at their circumstances and their surroundings, and it didn't look the way they had hoped it would look, so they just go isolate themselves, and they run into this condition of darkness, into this condition of blackness, and they live then in the unseen, unheard imaginations of their own. And so that's where Elijah is. He's inside of that cave, and he can't see. In fact, he's really ran there to die. He's asked God to kill him. He's running for his life, and then he asks the Lord to kill him. It's a bit crazy. But about three or four things that I want to remind Elijah and maybe remind us of if we want to live in the abundance that God has for us. If we want to live in all that generosity, we might have to look again. We might have to venture out of the cave of our own creation. We might have to venture out of the cave of our own comparisons. We might have to venture out of the caves of our own condemnations. We might have to venture out of our tribes. We might have to venture out of our preconceptions and our preferences and all of those perspectives and paradigms. We might have to look again. Elijah knew how to look again. He had told the servant to go look 7 times towards the sea until the servant finally came back and said, "Oh, I see a cloud." You might have to look again. You might have to look again at your life, at your thoughts, at your heart, at your attitudes. You might have to look again at that spouse before you walk away. You might have to look again at your job before you quit it. You might need to look again at your life. And though yesterday's performance on Mount Carmel didn't quite turn out the way you had expected it to, you might need to look again. God might be doing something deeper and far broader than you had anticipated. It might not just be about your selfie experience. You might need to look again. So go look again, Elijah. Come out of the cave for a moment and take another look. Look again. Number two, I would say that maybe the Elijahs that have run into the caves of self-pity might need to look around. Elijah woke up and there was food laying there, and there was no real footprint of who had left it, but the food was there. The provision was there, and you really can't figure out quite how the provision got there. And Elijah woke up from that sleep while he was running to the cave, and he looked around. You ought to look around. There are people that are for you. There is a God that loves you. There are people surrounding you that you may not be appreciating at this moment. I realize people have failed you. People have forgotten you. People have been flaky around you. I get it. And you don't trust anybody. And you certainly probably don't trust God. But you might need to look around. God has always surrounded you with himself and with others, that if you'd go ahead and risk receiving their love instead of worrying about their betrayal, you might be able to begin to see the light again, and the blindness of your darkness in that cave might begin to lift. So look again, look around. And the second thing I'd say to you is look ahead. Look into the future. See beyond this set of circumstances. Don't look at what you can see. Paul tells us to look at the things that are unseen. Even Christians amaze me, because they're always evaluating what they can see. They don't seem to realize that Jesus, one of his self-described purposes for being here, is that he could open the eyes of the blind, that he could cause us to see beyond the surface level, and that we could see into the Spirit and into that prophetic realm, and that we could have a vision that was not predicated on the ability of flesh and blood and gray matter, because my Father hasn't revealed that to you, Peter, or my Father has revealed that to you, Peter, not flesh and blood. And so look ahead. Look ahead into the future that Jeremiah said God has prepared for us, a future that is peaceful and a future of hope. So how do we realize, how do we live in this abundant life that Jesus said, I have come that you might have? And one translation says that you might have it to overflowing, that you might enjoy life. And I'm suggesting that the story of Elijah going from Mount Carmel to the cave of his own choice, and living in that darkness and that unawareness, living in a perspective and a perception that will rob him of the abundance of God. There's three things we need to do. You need to look again. You need to look around, and you need to look ahead. In other words, change your outlook. If you change your outlook, your outcome will be affected. If you change your perspective, change your point of view, change the way you're looking at it. Just because the Mount Carmel experience didn't accomplish what you thought it should doesn't mean that it didn't accomplish something. So just here sitting next to the chapel in Kansas, and I realize what good can come out of Kansas. Well, let me tell you, Dorothy was riding the wind, and she had the opportunity to go anywhere she wanted to, and she came home. She came home to Kansas. She came home to the heart of this great country. And so out of the heart of America, I'm coming to you with a word. Jesus came to give us abundant life. And in order to enjoy that life, we've got to get our eyes open, which means many times we have to come out of the caves of our own creation, the caves of our own choice, and that selective sight that hinders us from knowing and experiencing and living in the abundant wholeness of the life that Jesus has provided. So look again. Look around and look ahead. God has great things for you. So from the chapel, peace.